What should Florida State's transfer portal approach be, and what should their concerns be as well?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show is just about the portal, setting the baseline. As I get more information, I might do one of these shows again sometime in the next week or so. Already starting to hear rumblings about some players that are getting offers. I know a few major programs have spoken to intermediaries about different players, and I'm sure Florida State is in that same process. I think it will be the literally highest number of players they've had come in and come out in a single year since the portal's been around. I'll see if I'm right here pretty soon, but I think Florida State's going to have a purge of their roster. So at the back end, I'm going to have 5 questions that are my concerns. To get to those, I need to talk about what their goals are. Then I'll go back into those concerns because there's some that I'm not sure they can make. Number one, and up front here, before I really hit this, they need balance. There isn't like just one position. I'm going to talk about offensive line. That's the most important, but they need balance across the board. They're going to need 20 plus players. And to be honest with you, it's number one, be realistic. You're coming off a season. Once this is over in December 9th through January 7th, I believe, is the portal window. So it's pretty wide open. Players can enter their name, but they don't have to pick a school during that window. It can be later. I think Florida State is in a scenario where they're going to have to take more high ceiling guys than they would like, but they're probably going to have to try to take some high floor guys that don't necessarily have huge ceilings. Let me give you an example. Rourke, the quarterback at Indiana. He was a good player in the MAC. He played at Ohio. But anybody really think that he was going to be this good for Indiana? He's money. That's kind of like what Florida State got with Jared Verse. I mean, he played at Albany. They thought he was really good, but you couldn't project him to be an All-American like back-to-back years. That's a little rough after playing at the FCS level. So they need to hit a couple of home runs on those kind of guys, coach them up, etc. That's the first thing. If they're not realistic and they're just trying to throw money at the very, very top end based on the coaching staff turnover and all of that, probably going to be rough. Number two, I already touched on this, offensive line. I went over the depth chart a little bit based on the freshmen and sophomores in a recent podcast, and I discussed all the numbers. I might even have it still on this piece of paper here. I could probably find it, but Florida State was awful in terms of being able to play young offensive linemen this year or even have any success. Not only are they bad, they got a bunch of guys that are bad that are going to be leaving. And the young guys like Jalen Early, Andre Otto, and then depending on how you want to look at it, Terrence Ferguson, he was a transfer. They don't have much going on. And Lucas Simmons hasn't played. That was a guy they thought was going to start playing this year. He hasn't. What's going on there? They're going to need at least 4 offensive linemen from the portal. That is a horrific number. There's no nice way to say it. It is hard to find offensive linemen for 2 primary reasons. One, for whatever the deal is, O-linemen bond, they kind of stay where they're at. No position has guys go through a career and not transfer, even if they're not playing a lot, if at all, more than offensive line. 2, because so many people are in a spot that they need them, talking about coaches across the country, it could be Texas, it could be UCLA, it could be Wyoming, it could be BC, I don't know. But everybody's looking for tackles in particular and offensive linemen overall. The competition is high. So a player that you think for a year is worth $300K might go for $600K, maybe $700K. Do you want to allocate that much money to a so-so player? That's the market. Florida State needs 3 minimum. I mean, that'd be really low to me. But I think 4, because you need competition. You need somebody off the bench. Because like this year, again, just as it was in 2023, Florida State's depth chart got decimated with injuries. O-line's about chemistry anyway, but talent helps too. Experience helps as well. So getting a couple of veterans, maybe a few guys that are, 1 year into college, at least have been through a year of weight room that you recruited and they didn't sign, that decided they didn't like their situation. Those are good too, but they need a couple of graduate guys from the offensive line ranks, and they probably also need at least one just stalwart. I don't see that as being realistic since you fired your OC, Alex Atkins, who, by the way, is the O-line coach that got fired, but that's the spot they're in. So whoever they get to be the O-line coach is paramount that he can recruit the portal and high school, not one or the other. Needs to bring in some relationships, and we'll talk about that again here in just a minute. Next up, after offensive line, coaching hires, and I just talked about that a second ago. So the segue is you're hiring minimum of 3 coaches. Minimum. That's how I see this. I think there'll be more, but whatever coaches you bring in, I'm not saying rob the cupboard where you're at, but recruiting relationships that you had. So when a kid that you didn't sign goes in the portal, you have a relationship, you need to win those battles and bring them to Florida State. That is paramount. Having that relationship will help the continuity in Tallahassee, and it'll help the staff get along better because everybody wants good players, no matter if you're bringing a guy that's going to be coached by you directly or even your side of the ball. You just want good football players for the Noles. You got to get those guys out of the portal that maybe Norvell didn't know about. Maybe you hire a West Coast guy and he knows about a kid from Fresno that was really good, but we didn't get him. He went to play for Dion, didn't work out. Maybe he goes to Texas A&M, didn't work out. Whatever. Bring that kid to Florida State if you've got a good relationship with him and his family. Next, players coming back to Florida and Dixie. This is the easy one. Their expectation should be like any kid that enters the portal. This is why the back office staff is so important. The approach for Florida State should be, we have to vet each one of these kids, at least look. Not every guy has to be a starter. Is he a good special teams player? Is it a long snapper? Is it a punter? Whatever. I mean, you're going to lose good kickers this year. You need to have good players coming in across the board, and it's easier to get them if they're like a kid that's originally from South Georgia, South Alabama, from the Panhandle, a kid that's from Orlando. Anybody from Dixie, they need to look at. The one thing Florida State can definitely sell, I think everybody can agree on this, playing time. They're terrible this year. If you don't think you can come in and play early at Florida State, do the Noles want you? I mean, there might be a few exceptions. There's a couple of spots Florida State's got some talent. Running back, they're going to lose a really good player, but they have some good other young players too. Other than that, like receivers got some young, but nobody's really proven. You're losing Ja'Kai Douglas. Every spot you should kind of think you got a chance. Even tight end, they got 2 freshmen, but you want to rotate 3-4 guys at tight end, and that's a spot that has a lot of injuries anyway. You need to take one. That would be my guess, and you've got 1 recruit, so you'd be in a good spot. But at the same time, Florida State can't really be too picky. They got to get players. That's the other part of this. Don't just think it's only the elite guys here. You got to be realistic. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a few more of these and then get into the concerns that I have with the transfer portal. We are just 18 days out from it getting opened up. I like a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not trying to waste a whole bunch of time on something for just a handful of dollars. And that goes with my cellular service as well. It's got to be pretty easy or I'm not going to mess with it. So when Mint Mobile said it was going to be easy to get wireless for $15 a month, a whole lot of people have called them out on it. And it turns out it's pretty darn easy. The best part of the process is each time somebody goes through it, they can get rid of their old provider eventually, but it's easier to sign up with Mint Mobile. So to get started, to understand, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see how it works. All 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your own phone number along with all your existing contacts. So go to mintmobile.com. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on 3-month plan only. Speed slower than 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. This show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Florida State has a lot of needs in the portal, and there are a lot of things they have to take into account. The next one up on the list must avoid the me-first personalities. I think we can all agree that there's been some of that this year. Part of it might have been players on the roster, not saying it was all portal guys. They got a little big-headed, wanted NIL money, whatever. Florida State needs to say no. Here's my example of why. Pittsburgh's had a much better year this year after several good players left. Why? Narduzzi talked about how some of the guys that are asking too much NIL, go ahead and leave. Yeah, there's the door. I'll sign your papers. Florida State might have to do that too. I think they're going to have 20-plus players leave, and part of this will happen. That purge, that's okay. Next, number 7, a blend of one and done and guys that have multi-year. Here's an example. Offensive line, they need blend because some of their high school recruiting hasn't worked so well. So you need a few multi-year guys, but you got to have a stalwart too. They need somebody out of the portal that's going to come in. I'm here to get paid, not just by Florida State, but I'm here to set up, have one great season, then head to the National Football League. That is an obtainable goal, and it's not very hard to do. Depends on who you hire as your O-line coach and all that, and I'll see who it is. But if that hire is a good one, Florida State can absolutely do that. You can get a couple of those guys. You're going to have to pay through the nose for them. There's no shortcut there. That is coming. But you're going to be terrible next year if you don't, because the high school recruiting hasn't been good. So you need to figure it out, make a nice blend there. And it still balances out through the roster. Like, they've got some really good young linebackers that I talked about. Nicholson and Graham in particular have played really well of late. Why couldn't you find one really good veteran that comes in? Again, experience matters, especially at a position that's calling plays, setting the defense, changing alignments up front. Having another veteran wouldn't be a bad idea. Having two would be better. So get one more young guy, one more veteran. You got to blend. Get a guy that's a redshirt freshman at some school. Maybe he's an FCS kid that kind of grew weight, added 20 pounds after he left his high school ranks. So he was a miss by the recruiting rankings, whatever. You could use a couple, and it's a nice balance. That's something Florida State needs to do. Now the 5 key questions here. These are my concerns. Can Florida State overcome these? I don't know, but these are just my 5. Because of how horrific Florida State is this year, I know Bud Elliott talked about this on the Nolecast recently. I 100% agree. How much are the boosters going to buy in to the portal this year? They got all the stadium renovations. They have the lawsuit coming that the Lord only knows when it's going to end, not come. It's part of now, and it could expand with the ACC. Got the house settlement situation where players are going to start making money coming up here soon. Not sure how much they're going to dump into next season. Some people might, some people might not. That's my biggest concern. There's no way to know because one person pulling out their purse could be a big, big deal. Number 2, just flat out, I've talked about it quite a bit earlier in the show. Are you going to sign enough offensive line? I think 4 is the number that is minimum. 3, if you hit the home run and get like your top 3 guys or something, that's not going to happen. But I think you need 4. Low end. That's just not a normal thing to do, but Florida State might need to be able to do that. 3, I didn't talk about this at the top going through the list in general, but I want to use this as an example. And it kind of exemplifies something I talked about on a recruiting pod earlier this week. When I was growing up, Florida State's interior defensive linemen, they didn't have one good one. They didn't have 2. They had depth They had size. They had speed. They had guys that, when they were coming off the bench, their backup for the Noles, there's a really high chance he was just as good. Their third or fourth guy was as good or better than your number one. The only exceptions to that on their regular schedule were Florida and Florida State. Occasionally, Virginia Tech could have a guy like that, maybe North Carolina or something. But by and large, 80 to 90% of the teams they played, the backups were better. And in the third and fourth quarter, they slaughtered teams if they were run-first teams. The rotation of those guys, staying fresh, really killed them. Florida State, from what I've heard, Jackson and Farmer, they could possibly get them back. Doubt they get both, and they might not get either. Now, I'm high on the young guys. Lions, I think, is just as an example, he has over 200 snaps this year. Really good football player. He's a redshirt sophomore. Think the world of it. They've got other good young players, too, across the defensive front seven. But if you can get one more even, it'd be great if they get two. Go with KJ Sampson, Lions, etc. That D tackle, it would take a lot of pressure off the young linebackers and give Florida State a chance. What has killed them in the back half of this season? Run gap fits. Well, if you got a defensive lineman blowing up the O-line, you're not going to have as many problems with the linebackers. So I think they need at least one stud, not a good one, a stud at D tackle. And I'd also like to have another journeyman guy, just depth. It's really important. Number 4, overcoming coaching changes. This is kind of complex, a little convoluted, but hear me out. You're not going to get everybody in the fold in a timely fashion. There might be a position or two. It takes longer. Background checks. Coaching hires can be goofy because maybe a guy that Norvell wants is on a team that ends up in the playoff. They win their first, there's a lot of weird stuff with it. Are they going to be able to overcome as a staff, whatever position it is, and there'll be at least one, where they got to wait and that guy can't be publicly announced in a time frame they want and be involved with the in-home visit or however it's going to work with the portal this year. Don't even know all the rules. That's really important. Finally, I almost want to say don't have two, but are they going to be able to dwindle this to just one position, hopefully none, where they have a hole? They're going to need 20-plus guys in the portal this year. I'm worried, and I don't even know which side of the ball to be, but they'll have a position where they miss because, again, did the boosters donate enough to get the NIL money? I don't know. If you have a hole, let's say, I don't think this will be Florida State's problem, but usually for teams, it's corner and D-line. Those are two spots, ironically. Florida State historically has been very, very good. That's why they've been a really good program. But let's say Florida State has an injury at corner next spring. A key guy misses the season, has broken leg or something. Who knows? If you don't bring in a guy, and Azariah is probably going to leave, and you're just going with the young guys, that looks good. You got 4, but even one guy gets hurt, you're down to 3 or so guys. You're not sure. Are you going to be able to get through the season if you have another injury? That's a problem. So can they get enough balance with all of these different positions, both sides of the ball, and really kicker, punter too? You got to look at everything so that other teams can attack this one spot and mitigate your talent that you did bring in. That's how college football is played. You find a weakness, you attack it until they fix it. So those are my concerns. Overall, I think Florida State is in a decent position because they got started on this early and they knew that's the one advantage of having a bad season. Hey, we're going to have to purge. So I might as well mention that. They're obviously going to have to take 20-plus guys. They're obviously going to be in a scenario where they need a blend. You need some top-end guys that are going to be impact. Like if you could get a left tackle, a true D tackle, the guys that are higher in at those spots, it would change your roster. But I don't know if that's plausible. Obviously, you can get a number 1 receiver. It would be a godsend. That's important. But you do need some other blend because this recruiting class is going to be short, not only on talent, but numbers. Too many guys are wobbling as of this show. I mean, who knows when it's going to happen. I will be shocked if Solomon Thomas at this point signs with Florida State. They're going to be LSU or Florida. Don't count out Miami either. But that's just one example. They might only sign about 10 kids. That's a problem. You need to be able to supplement that by getting kids that are current freshmen and sophomores at other schools to come to Florida State as well. If you don't, Eventually, you're going to have roster holes in terms of experience. You're going to have a senior class with like 6 kids or something, 8 kids. That season will be rough. You need to get this roster blended, and the transfer portal can absolutely help you do that. And again, finally, you got to find a way to get the players that you need, like O-line. That point can't be accentuated enough. Really, really need to hit the home run there. We'll see who they hire. That's the one hire that is very important. It might even be in some ways more important than the offensive coordinator because it's such a position in need and Florida State's so short on numbers. But anyway, I wanted to give my thoughts on the portal, what's coming up. I'm going to do another one of these fairly soon, but that's where I'm at now. You're going to start seeing some kids throw their name in with the season about over. After this weekend, you'll probably see some kids opt out of the last game because they want to be healthy. I know that sucks, but you'll see that. Not saying Florida State, just like in general across college football. Watch for that. That's definitely a possibility. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping and talk some Noles with me. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when this podcast is getting dropped. We're available each and every day of the week. Truly appreciate it. Everybody have a good one, and I'll see you soon.